Okay, so we are back to our mishnah that we've been plodding through, and there was a slight change of plans. I had said last time that I wanted to do the whole mishnah with a sforno, but then my chavrusa situation changed, and I realized it was going to be more efficient to do the third clause, which is what we're up to anyway. So let's do that. So read the whole thing again. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Imein Torah, in derech eretz, Imein derech eretz, in Torah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, if there's no Torah, there's no derech eretz, there's no way of land, and if there's no derech eretz, there's no Torah. Imein chachma in yira, Imein yira in chachma. If there's no wisdom, there's no fear. If there's no fear, there's no wisdom. That's what we did last time. Imein Binah in Daas, Imein Daas in Binah. If there's no understanding, there's no knowledge. If there's no knowledge, there's no understanding. In kemach in Torah, in Torah in kemach. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. If there's no Torah, there's no flour. So I did what I did last time, which is I erased all the questions that we raised on the specific clause we were working on, and I kept all the questions that we have on the Mishnah in general. So let me reread those just to get our minds into it, and then we'll ask questions on our clause. So the question is, hold on just 1 second here. Oh no, actually that was also from last time. So our questions were, what is the meaning of if there's no X, there's no Y, and vice versa? What is it saying about these pairings? And if you take it literally, then how do you get started? So we've been working on the assumption that it's not that you can't have one without the other. It's that each one assists and perfects and completes the other. But you can have, one without the other. Otherwise you can get started. We also asked for all these variables, are the having and not having binary, or is there a quantitative sliding scale? We also asked about the relationship between the first and the fourth clauses, which are about Torah. Okay, we can leave that aside for tonight. What is the practical lesson or application of each clause? Who is the intended audience of the Mishnah? Is this for a chassid in training, or is this for everybody? If it's for a chassid in training, then some of these are a little difficult. Like, do you really have to say what happens if there's no Torah? I mean, he's going to be working on Torah. And then what's the hava mean of each clause? What would we think if he didn't teach us this? And why would we think that? Okay, so our focus tonight is on Binah and Daas. The obvious questions, which I'm not even going to ask you because someone's going to say this, is what are the definitions of of Binah and Daas in this context? Okay. Are there other questions on this specific clause or on the whole Mishnah in light of this clause?
This might bring us on a,
what was that?
Sorry, this might bring us on a similar cycle as the last time, but the way I've learned about Binah and Da'a, like one comes from the other. So how does it work in reverse?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to think if I can take this question and so which one have you learned comes from the other?
I forget. It's Chabad, right? So Chachma Binah and Da'a. So
Right.
Binah goes to Da'a. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's I was hoping someone would ask. Okay. So the thing that makes this different is, Torah and Derech Eretz, are two different things. Okay. Yira and Chachma are two different things. Binah and Das are like in the same category, and there is an order. Okay. The order that you'll find in who did I see that said this explicitly? There's someone who says that the order in the psukim is always going to be, I might be misquoting this, but yeah, the order is Chachma Binah Das. Okay, I'll show you just a couple examples because I was doing this in my mishlei shiur this week, my morning mishlei shiur. Okay, so in mishlei Gim, that is Bereshis, which is not mishlei. In mishlei Gimel Yud Tes, it says, Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz konen shemaim bitvuna b'da'ato tehomos nivka'u ushchakim yirafu tal. Hashem founded the earth with chachma. He established the heavens with tvuna. Tvuna and bina are the same thing. They both mean understanding. B'da'ato tehomos nivka'u ushchakim yirafu tal. With his knowledge, the depths were cleaved and the heavens dripped dew. Okay, so now that's talking about Hashem. That doesn't necessarily mean it is in that order, but then in 24, similar thing, 24:3 in Mishlei, 3 and 4. The Chachma Yibane Bais, With chachma, he builds a house. Okay, it's talking about a person. Uvitvuna yiskonan, and with tvuna, he establishes it permanently. Uvadas hadarim yimalu kol hon yakar v'naim, and with knowledge, its rooms are filled with all types of precious and pleasant wealth. Okay, so that does seem to be in order, because you obviously have to build a house before you can establish it, and you have to build a house and establish it before you fill the rooms. Okay, let's look at one more. I think in Devarim. Oh, actually, no, this is only going to say two of them. You see a lot of cases where it's Chachma then Binah, like when he's talking about the judges. Okay, Habu lachem anashim chachmim unvonim viduim l'shivtekem. The last one is not really Daas, but it's a point for yourselves, men who are wise, understanding, and known to their tribes. Okay, so the point being, though, is that I'm going to put this into the question now, is with the other clauses, there's not necessarily a pre-existing order, but here there is an order of chachma, then bina, okay, then daas. Okay, so I can understand. I think that's what you're asking. I can understand if there's no bina, then there is no daas, because that's the normal order. Okay, but the other one clause doesn't make sense. Is that what you're asking, Vanessa?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, excellent, good. Okay, just another proof, by the way, that with chachma and bina, it goes in that order, is in mishlei, also in mishlei, in the introduction, he talks about what you need, or what the book is giving you. So he says, Lases lepsaim arma, to give simpletons cunning, lenar das umazima, to the youth knowledge and design, yishma chacham v'yosef lakach, the chacham will hear and increase his learning, the navon takbulis yipneh, and the navon, the person of understanding, will acquire strategies. So that's again chacham and navon. Again, there are lots of examples of this in mishlei, but yeah. Okay, what else? Yeah, Lauren.
Maybe like given what we last said, is there any relation between this clause and then the last clause, like chachma and yira?
Okay, good. So given the fact that the order is chachma, bina, the daas, is there any relationship between this clause and the previous one? Yeah, which is chachma. Okay. Oh, I'm also going to add something here. I think we said this last time, but I'm going to add this to our definition question. Is this talking about bina, bina, the daas in general, or specific Torah, bina, vadas? Okay, or something else? Okay. Okay, just to highlight the questions also that that light up here is yeah, so here we have to understand also is having or not having here in a binary sense or a quantitative scale. What's the practical lesson or application? Obviously, you can't just say, you should get bina and you should get das, because that's like, obvious. And then who's the audience? And then what's the havamina? Is why would you think that you could get bina without das or das without bina? Okay. Anyone have any any ideas before we get into some really, really difficult territory? Anyone have any just elementary, like, working definitions of bina and das that they've just have in their mind? Yeah, Vanessa?
I raised my hand at the wrong time. I just general idea on if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this isn't like a fully fledged idea, but like I'm imagining like a school kid, and like instead of just teaching him like every single math there ever was, if we're using these in general words and not Torah words, like you can't just like read the textbook and know all of math. You have to also practice it and like do problems and like
Okay.
have to go back and forth. You have to take algebra And then when you pass algebra, you can move on to learning more about trig. And then when you like practice trig and actually pass it, then you can move on to calculus. Like that might be the back and forth nature, and that might explain how one feeds into the other. Which doesn't answer all of our questions. But
no. So that's a good approach, which is that it's talking about like what you focus on in terms of training in the skill versus the raw concepts, I guess. Okay,
right.
Good. All right, good. Yeah, keep that in your mind. That's going to come back to help us, I think. Yeah, Lauren?
I remember learning that like Binah is like mavin davar mitoch davar, to understand something within something. So I guess like deep understanding. That's kind of how I've thought of it. And then I guess I thought dot. I don't know. I feel like Daas. I've heard that means basic knowledge or facts, but maybe it's, I don't know how that's different than chachma. I don't know. It sounds like it's on a lower level than Daas, but it's supposed to be
right.
higher. But then it comes last, so that's why I'm confused.
Yeah. Okay. So of the three terms, the one that has the most consistent definition is Binah. Is anytime you see a definition of Binah, it's going to be mevin davar mitoch davar. Okay, is understanding one thing from another. What that means, and there might be subtleties in there, but like I have not seen other definitions of Binah than that. At least in the Rishonim. Okay. Daas, the way we learn it, or the way we use the term knowledge, I think can apply to basic stuff, but I think the way that they use it, that Chazal use it, or that the Torah uses it, Tanakh, is it's a higher level, and really the factual knowledge, if anything, is chachma. And I'll just show you here. We're not really going to be talking about chachma so much today, but the clearest definition is Rashi. Where is it? Rashi on Mishlei says for Chacham and Navon, he says Chacham is ze bal shmua. This is someone who has heard knowledge, okay, meaning someone who has received knowledge. And then Navon is Musaf al Chacham, that's added to the Chacham, Shiodea lahavin davar mitoch davar, umosif al shmuaso. He understands one thing from another, and he increases his what he's upon what he has heard. Okay, or another Rashi is in Devarim that I quoted earlier. This is actually a clearer Rashi, in my opinion. Rashi here, talking about the judges and their qualities, says Chachamim. I always forget what ksufim means. Let's see if the translation has. I don't think it does. I think that must be from another. Okay, yeah. So, but here's the Rashi quotes Chazal. First, he says Nevonim is mevinim davar mitoch davar, is understanding one thing from another. Zo sheshal Arios es Rabbi Yossi. I don't know who Arios is, but that's what Arios asked Rabbi Yossi. Ma bein chachamim lenevonim. What is the difference between chachamim and nevonim? So the answer he gives is chacham dome leshulchani ashir. So the chacham is comparable to a literally a rich table merchant. Okay, which you'll see from the context, it's a money changer. Kishamevin lo dinarim liros roe. When they bring him coins to examine, he examines them. Kishamevin yoshev v'toeh. And when they don't bring him, then he sits and just like twiddles his thumbs. Okay. Navon dome l'shuchani tagar, but a navon is comparable to a traveling money changer. Kishamevin liros. When they bring him money, he checks it out. Kishamevin, and when they don't bring him, who mechazer, or maybe he goes out and brings it himself. So like the way I like to think of it, not so much defining chachma and bina, but chacham and navon. A chacham is a dependent learner, and a navon is an independent learner. The chacham is totally reliant on other people giving him knowledge, but the navon certainly continues to learn from other people, but he can also go out and extract new knowledge on his own. That's like what Rashi was saying in Mishlei, is that he's Mosif al Shmuaso. He adds onto what he hears by what he understands. Okay, so that's Chachma and Tuvuna. Yeah, but Daas is the hard one. Okay, Daas is the hardest of them. Okay, any other ideas or observations or approaches before we get our hands dirty? Okay, so I have here three meforshim. Okay, I have the Rambam, I have Rabbeinu Yonah, and I have the Meiri. And as I mentioned in the teaser, this Rambam, I believe, is the most difficult to read Rambam that I've ever seen. Okay, I remember asking Rav Pesach about this in my first year in yeshiva. And it's the type of Rambam that you can just come back to like every couple of years and hope that you understand it. And I'm going to predict what's going to happen in your mind. Okay, and I want you to tell me after I say this. I want you to tell me if it actually happened. Okay, I'm going to read the Rambam line by line and translate it. Okay, I'll type out the translation. As I'm reading it, line by line, you're going to go, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And then at a certain point, you're gonna go like, wait, what? And then everything's gonna fall apart. Okay. And then you're gonna be looking at it and you'll be like, I don't know what he just said. Okay. So that's what's gonna happen. And let's read it. Okay. And we're gonna have to really break it down. Okay. But this I'm just gonna translate it straight. Okay. First, he gives us a nice little introduction to intimidate us. So he says, okay, this first part we already have. Okay, so he says, however, ma'amaro bebino v'das hu inyan philosophy dak me'od. His statement about Binah, I'm just going to use the translation here. Binah and Daas is a very nuanced philosophical matter. Okay, va'ani azkarehu somech al havanas mi she'iyan bezeh ha'inyan. He says, I will mention it relying on the understanding of someone who has already studied the matter. Okay, in other words, he's going to mention like what he thinks the pshat is, but he's relying on the fact that we, the readers, have already like investigated this on our own. Okay, so he's like giving us notes. Okay, v'zeh. Shehadas asher tagia lanu v'nilamdena. Okay, the Daas, I'm going to go ahead and just not translate this. Okay, the Daas that we arrive at and learn. Omnam hi hasagasenu hamuskalos asher nasigen is the apprehension of the concepts that we apprehend. Im bishenafshit hatsura v'naskilena, whether by abstracting the form, and I'm going to go ahead and translate naskilena because seichel is another term that's thrown in here, and cognizing it, okay, or comprehending it. I'm going to say cognize. I think that's going to be better. V'im bishenasi hatsurus hanifrados b'mitziusan mibli shenasiman anachnu daas, or whether by apprehending the forms that are separate in their existence without us making them daas, ela shehin b'mitziusan daas, but they in and of themselves are daas. Bezos hasaga asher hi asher tikari bina, and this apprehension is what we call Binah, Behi Hadas, and it is the Daas. Uvadas Gamkein an Naskil, and with Daas we also cognize. V'yihye efshar lanu lahasig mashanasig, and it becomes possible for us to apprehend what we apprehend. Uki'ilu yomar, it's as if the Tana is saying, im lo nasig muskal, if we do not apprehend a concept, ein da'as lanu, we have no da'as. V'im lo tiye lanu da'as, and if we have no da'as, lo nasig muskal, we will not apprehend a concept. Lefisha b'das nasigehu, because with da'as we apprehend it. V'havanas zeh kasha, the understanding of this is difficult. Afilu min hasfarim hamuchubarim bo, even from the books that have been written about it. Kol shekain mikan, all the more so from here. V'amnam hishanu elav hishar bilvad. However, we just pointed you in the right direction. Okay. Everyone understand? Good. Cheers over. Ha 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 ha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's just keep our eye on the ball here. Okay. We can just gray this out because that was the intro, and we can gray out the part where he makes us try to feel better for not understanding something. Oops, I didn't mean to gray it out like that. I meant to gray it out like this. Okay, so let me just read through the whole thing once more. Okay, and then I'm going to ask you if you got anything. Okay, and then I'm going to try to fill in some of the background information that the Rambam is assuming that we already know. So he says like this: the Daas that we arrive at and learn is the apprehension of the concepts that we apprehend, whether by abstracting the form and cognizing it, or whether by apprehending the forms that are separate in their existence without us making them Daas, but they in and of themselves are Daas. And this apprehension is what we call Binah, and it is the Daas. That's the part that I predicted that your mind would not work anymore. And with Daas, we also cognize, and it becomes possible for us to apprehend what we apprehend. It's as if the Tana is saying, if we do not apprehend a concept, we have no Daas, and if we have no Daas, we will not apprehend the concept, because with Daas, we apprehend it. Okay, anyone get anything out of that? Whether it is an idea, a question, an observation, something? Yeah, Lauren?
Is it possible that he's talking about like the whole form, surah, and
Yep, that's where we're gonna go.
Okay.
Okay, so Rambam is relying on a very, very basic Aristotelian concept called, I mean, people use different terms, Homer and Surah. Rambam likes to use Golem and Surah. Form and matter, or form and material. Okay, so I don't know to what extent you have been exposed to these concepts, but because I want to make sure we understand the Rambam in his own terms, I'm going to show you some. This is how I taught this concept to high schoolers. Okay, and there's a lot. I feel this is one of these concepts where the more angles you see it from, then the easier it is to grasp. Okay, so I'm going to go from several different angles. I just want to think where I want to start. I have sources here. I'm just making a last minute change of mind about where to start. 1 second. Okay, I think I'm going to start with a visual aid. Okay, and I always forget what this blurs. Okay, let's just. Oh, it's blurring the slipper. Okay, let me unmute it to not have a blurry slipper. Hold on. Okay, so this is a slipper. Okay, it is made out of plastic. All right. Aristotle held that anything, okay, whether man-made or natural, has 4 causes. Okay, and by cause he means it wouldn't exist without that cause. Okay, and the 4 causes are the material cause, the formal cause, the efficient cause, and the final cause. Okay, the material cause is what it is made of. So the material cause of this slipper is plastic. Okay, the formal cause is what it is made into. Okay, and that is the most slippery of the 4 causes, and that's what we're going to be talking about the most. So what is it made into? So it is made into a, let's just call it a shoe for simplicity's sake. It's made into a shoe. Okay, so the shoeness is the formal cause. Now, don't get tricked by the word form to think that form equals shape, because form is not limited to the physical shape. You can have many things that are different shapes but have the same form. Okay, so for example, you can have a table and a chair and a couch. Okay, and all of those things are furniture, but they have very different shapes. Okay, furniture is like a concept that they embody that like unifies them. Okay, so so the form is what the thing is, what you make the material into. Okay, efficient cause is that which effectuates the change. Efficient cause is that which brings the material into its form. Okay, so I assume this is made from a machine. Okay, so it would be the machine. Okay, and then the final cause is the purpose, is why. Okay, is so the purpose of a shoe is to provide comfort and protection for the feet while walking. Okay, so again, all these things are causes in the sense that material cause is the plastic. Without the plastic, you would not have this shoe. Okay, formal cause is the shoeness. Without the concept of shoeness, you would not have shoes. Okay, and if you go to an alien planet where the beings have no feet, and you show them this, they would just see a lump of plastic. It would not be shoes to them. Okay, efficient cause is what makes the material into the thing. So without the machine that transformed this plastic into this shoe, then you wouldn't have a shoe. And then the final cause is the purpose of it. So without the need to protect our feet in walking, then no one would have made the shoe in the first place. Okay, so those are the 4 causes. And of those 4, the only one we're going to be talking about is the material cause, which is what the Rambam is going to term matter, and the formal cause, which the Rambam is going to term form. Okay. Any questions so far? I mean, we're going to go through this through different angles. And again, I apologize if you already are very familiar in this, but if you are very familiar with this, then please chime in with any other explanations that help. Okay. Okay.
I'm very happy you're doing this because I get very confused by this. So thank you
good. I'm glad.
for going over this.
Okay, good.
I did this type of stuff in high school, so it's a good refresher, but also I'm comfortable enough that it's not like worse. It's
okay,
good.
good. Okay, Ayala, the only thing you missed was the clause that we're doing is imein bina ein daas, imein daas ein bina. And then I translated the Rambam, which I say is the most difficult to understand Rambam ever. And I am pasting it into the chat, and you can read it on your own. But what we're doing now is we're doing a review of what you and I last did in Lomdeha when we went over form and matter in Eov, okay, which we spent like a week or 2 on. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do it all in like 15 minutes. Okay, so you can go ahead and tune into whichever thing you want. Okay, so what I'm gonna try what I'm gonna try to explain now in the Rambam is this statement here. Okay. You notice that the Rambam says the Daas we arrive at and learn is the apprehension of the concepts we apprehend, and then he subdivides it into 2 categories, whether by abstracting the form and cognizing it, or whether by apprehending the forms that are separate in their existence without us making them Daas, but they in and of themselves are Daas. Okay, so I want to explain what the Rambam means by those 2 categories here. Okay. So let's look at the Mishnah Torah in Hilchos Yisodei Torah. So this is when the Rambam says, I'm going to give you an introduction so you can love God. And this is the first thing he says. He says, I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and I translated it to English here also. Everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in his world can be divided into 3 categories. Now, these 3 categories, okay, this is the tricky thing whenever you're learning anything Aristotelian. You have to ask yourself, how many of these concepts are still applicable? And it's just we're not used to thinking of the world this way. And how many of these concepts like are wrong? Okay, so you're going to see that 2 of these things at least are definitely applicable. The middle one, not quite sure. Okay, so just forewarning. So here are the 3 categories of everything. Mehem bruim she'en mechubarim migolim b'tzura. Some are creations that are a composite of material and form. Vehim nehavim v'nifsadim tamid. They come into being and pass away continually, like the bodies of man, animal, plant, and minerals. Okay, so that's physical things in the world are a combination of matter and form. Okay, and again, that goes for man-made objects, and that goes for natural objects. So take my favorite example, take an apple. Okay, an apple is a certain is comprised of certain matter. It's got sugars and probably some proteins and fiber or whatever. I don't really know much about the chemistry of it, and it is in a certain form of apple. Okay, but that form, comes into being and passes away, right? Like first off, the apple starts off as the bud of an apple blossom, and then it grows, and then the petals fall away, and then it becomes an apple, and then the apple falls, and then it decomposes eventually, and then becomes soil. Okay. In Eov, we use the analogy of the circle of life from the Lion King, which is a good analogy for that. So that is all the stuff in what do you call it, in the physical world. Okay. Next category. Some Hebrew here. Umehem beruim she'en mechubarim migolim v'tzura. Some are comprised of material and form, but they do not change from body to body and from form to form, like the first category. Ella tsurasam kavua begolmam laolam. Rather, their form is permanently fixed in their material forever. Ve'ena mishtanim kamo alien, and they don't change like the first category. Vehim hagalgalim hakuchavim shevehem. They are the celestial spheres and the planets or the stars that are embedded in them. Ve'in golmam kishar glumim v'lo tsurasam kishar tsuros. Their form is not like other forms, and their material is not like other material, and the form is not like other forms. Okay, so that was what they thought. They thought that basically there were 2 categories of like physical existences. There was the terrestrial existences on Earth that come into being and pass away, and like the matter and form are constantly like undergoing change. And then they thought that there were the heavenly bodies in the celestial realm that were physical, but they were unchanging and permanent, and they were made up of a different kind of matter, of the fifth element, and they did not come into being and pass away. Now we know that the moon is made out of the same stuff that Earth stuff has. Okay, so that particular is no longer true. But as we go on, we'll ask ourselves: is there a category of this in the real world? Yeah, Vanessa.
I want to make sure my thinking is right while going through this. And I understand that like what they thought and that science doesn't really hold up now.
Yeah.
If we're talking about like Van Gogh's Starry Night, I understand that the painting itself can be destroyed, but like can we say that like this applies like as a concept, like the concept of Starry Night, like we have like digital media, like everyone knows Starry Night when they see it.
Yeah. Okay, so
does that fit in here, or is that a later category, or just not in this
so I would put that category in A. Okay, that Van Gogh's Starry Night, the physical painting, is a composite of material and form. Okay, the example that I want to work with, not that your example is wrong, but the example I want to work with is one that is going to also apply. It's going to be easier for us to think about when we think about the Mishnah and Avos. So let's talk about the design of a building. Okay, so the design of a building, let's say I have like a design of a home, okay, and I build the home in accordance with that design. Okay, so right now you have material, so the wood and the metal and the bricks and all that other stuff, and it is embodying, so that's the material, and then it's embodying the form. Okay, now if I destroy that home, I didn't destroy the form, I, so to speak, severed the connection between the form and the material. And like now all the material is on the ground and the form is no longer organizing it or arranging it. Okay. But if I wanted to, I could rebuild the house. And in fact, I could build many more exact copies of the house, and that form is embodied in all those things. And like you said, if I destroy all the houses, I'm not destroying the form. I'm just severing the form from its matter. Okay. Is that ring true with your Van Gogh example? Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get in. It's a much more concrete example. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, so let's go on, and it'll become even clearer in a little while. Okay, last category. Umehem beruim tsura below golem klal. Some are formed without any material at all. Vehem hamalachim. They are the angels. Now, I hope this isn't a truth bomb that I'm dropping on people. But you know, the first time you see this idea, it's very shocking. Rambam says that malachim are laws of nature. Okay, I'm not going to go into that right now. We're not going to talk about what angels are, but I just want to explain what he means by that. Oh, sorry, he goes on. Shamalachim enam guf ugvia. Angels are not physical material bodies, elatsuros nifrado zomizo, but forms that are distinct from one another. Okay, now forget the non-Maimonidean concept of angels. Okay, like I know some of you might be thinking about this week's Parsha and Avram gets visited by the angels. Don't think of those angels. Okay, but just think we're only going to use this one example of angels, of laws of nature. Okay, and if you think about it, laws of nature, the way that the Rambam's thinking about it, are form without matter. Okay, so let's take gravity, because I think that's of all the laws of nature, that's the one that like we grow up knowing about and is the most intuitive to us. Okay, I don't know what gravity is, but gravity is a law, a non-physical law that governs physical things. Okay, and by non-physical, I mean that you can't hold gravity in your hand. Okay, you can't measure it. It doesn't have dimensions. It doesn't have material properties. Okay, it is a force. Okay, something that governs material things and affects material things, but it itself is not physical. Okay. So those are your three categories. There's creations that are a composite of form and matter that change. Then there's creations that are a composite of form and matter that don't change, which Rambam's example is not true anymore, but I do maintain there is an example of that now. And then there's laws of nature. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read another Rambam, and then I'm going to read an excerpt from a book, and then we'll have, I think, everything we need to be able to understand the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos on some level. Okay, not totally. Okay, later on in Yesodi Torah 4:7, he says like this: "Olam einata roe golem below tzura, or tzura below golem." You will never see material without form, nor form without material. Okay, you'll never see with your eyes. Ella Leiv ha'adam hu shemachalik haguf hanimsa b'da'ato v'yodea shu mechubar migolim etzura. Rather, it is the mind of man that divides the body that exists in his mind and knows that it is comprised of material and form. Okay, so take our building example. Okay, let's say you're an architect and you go and you study a building. Okay, so you're only seeing the embodied form of that building. You're not seeing pure material because you're seeing the house. Okay, and you're also not seeing just the design. You're seeing the embodied design. But in your mind, you can say, you can abstract that form from the material and have that form in your mind in a way that like you can examine as like an object of thought. Okay, and I think a good example of this is if you don't imagine a perfect building, imagine a dilapidated building, a building that's like breaking down. And let's say like it has like 4 columns in the front, and like one of the columns is kind of crumbled, and like the door is a little warped, and like part of the building is being renovated. Okay, so you see this like building that is deteriorating. Okay, but you abstract the idealized form from it, and in your mind it doesn't have any imperfections because all the imperfections are really in the marriage between the material and the form, but the form itself is pure and pristine. And in fact, what you could do is you could create an abstract representation of that form by drawing a blueprint. Okay, now the blueprint is not the form, it's a symbol of the form, or it's a representation of the form. The form really exists in the mind of the artist, and it exists in the building when the building is built. Okay, but that's what he means when he's saying that the mind of man can extract them. Okay. So Viodea Shiesham Gufim Shagolem Mehuber. So he's going to go through the 3 categories again. He knows when the mind of man knows that there are bodies whose forms are are comprised of the 4 elements. Okay, V'gufam Shagolem Pashut Ve'enu Mehubar Migolem Acher. And there are bodies whose material is simple and they are not comprised of another material. Okay, now I think that is an example of what the Rambam was describing when he says that there are certain things that are physical, but their form and their matter are like what do you call it? Unchanging and like fixed. They don't come to being and pass away. So I don't know at what level, but I would think that whatever subatomic particle cannot be decomposed would be that. It would be like a form that is unchanging, that is married to its matter, because it is physical, but it is not comprised of other things, and it doesn't change. Okay, it itself could be the building block of other stuff, but it doesn't change. Okay, but if that turns out to not be true, it's not going to affect us. Okay, because we're really only going to be concerned with the first 2 categories, the first and the third category. And then the last one is Vahatsurus she'ein lahem golem ela ina nirin la'ayin, the forms that have no material, that are not visible to the eye. Ela be'ein halev him yaduim, they are known through the mind's eye. Kamoshi adanu adon hakol below riyas ayin, just like we know the Lord of all without the seeing of the eye. So that's like gravity. You never see gravity. You see the effects of gravity, but the mind can grasp gravity. And same thing with all the other laws of nature. Okay, so that is the end of that Rambam. Okay, any questions yet? We're going to do one more angle. Okay, now Ayala, you might remember or be traumatized by this. There's a book called The Hungry Soul, okay, by Dr. Leon Kass, who is, you know what? I might as well do my book commercial. Hold on here, because I've been looking through this, reading through this book. Hold on, let me just unblur my screen again, and then grab the book. Where is it? It is right there. Okay, so there's this book called Reading Genesis, The Beginning of Wisdom, Reading Genesis by Leon Kass. So he is a philosopher. He is the Addie Clark Harding Professor on the Committee of Social Thought at the college at the University of Chicago, and Hertog Fellow in Social Thought. Okay, this doesn't really say what his specialty is. Philosophy, I think bioethics is his area. So he wrote a commentary on Bereshis, and then he just came out with a commentary on Shemos a couple years ago. Okay, and he is I think he's Jewish, but he's secular. And basically, what he does is he has what is called a wisdom-seeking approach of reading Torah, and basically he's going into it saying we're going to try to read this and get ideas out of it. Okay. And it is a masterful commentary. It was recommended to me by several other people in yeshiva. It is just very, very good. And it's a very fresh look. Obviously, he's not agreeing with like, all the premises of the Masorah, but it's just a very, very refreshing, good commentary. I highly recommend it. If you're interested in his intro where he explains his method, I think I have an article about it that I can share with you. Very, very, I wish I wish this were the standard of how non-religious people looked at religious texts, because it's just very, very productive. Okay, but that's not what this book is. This book is called The Hungry Soul, which is a book he wrote about eating and explaining Aristotelian concepts through eating. Okay, and specifically form. And he, in fact, at the end of this book, he goes through all the halachos in Vayikra about the kosher and non-kosher species and shows how like kashrus is inculcating an awareness of natural forms and trying to bring that into our eating, which is something that is like breaking away from from animalistic type of a relationship with food. So he's just, again, really good thinker. So I'm going to read this little excerpt, which has 3 paragraphs. Okay. It's very good writing, but it's very dense writing. Okay. So he's very articulate, but very dense. But this is the best English description. Like if I were going to give someone one page, this is what I did with my students. I'm going to give them one page that like walks them through the concept of form. This is the best one that I have. Okay. And what he's going to try to do is he's going to try to express what form is, because form is the most elusive concept out of all of them. So here's what he says. Every tangible object or being, whether of natural origin or made by human beings, both is something and is made out of something. So far, so good. Provisionally, let us call the latter its material and the former its form. Form and material are, in the first instance, relative and correlative terms, meaning form is the something made of certain materials. Materials are, as materials of and for the thing as formed. So, for example, if you have a table, okay, so made out of wood, so it's the wood of the table, and it's a wooden table. There's no such thing as a table that is not made of wood. Or sorry, there's no such thing as a table that's not made of material. Okay, the form and the material exist relative to each other. Okay. In fact, he goes on, in fact, to be material means to be potential, to be able to receive a form or forms, to be capable of being worked on by some process or operation that would transform it. That is, form it into something whose material it then becomes. Wood is by itself just wood. Marble is marble. Cholesterol is cholesterol. But marble becomes also material for Michelangelo only because and when its capacity to be the marble of David, David or Moses, is realized through the workings of the sculptor's hand. And cholesterol becomes material for a cholesterol-requiring organism when its capacity to interact intimately with other membrane materials is realized as it is incorporated by the organism as a component of its living cell membrane. Now, I don't know about you, I find the example of sculpture easier than cholesterol, so I'm going to just stop and talk about sculpture. Okay, so you have marble, and Michelangelo carves the David out of it. Okay, so when that marble was a block of marble, it was just material and it had a lot of potential. Okay, but the more formed it is, the more you're actualizing that potential in a certain specific way, and the more it's actualized, the less potential there is. You could carve a block of marble into the David or into the Moses or into a donkey, but you can't carve the David into the Moses or a donkey because it's already been actualized in that way. Okay. So then he goes on and he says, without ceasing altogether to be or to manifest properties of marble or cholesterol, these things are transformed and altered by their subordination to the activity of information. The materials, though following their own nature, are at the same time constrained by their new arrangements, which constitute a nature of a higher order. Okay, so let's take another example with the table again. Okay, let's take a bunch of pieces of wood, okay, and that are on the ground. So that's just material, okay? But then when you make them into a table, okay, let's say you make it a table without using any other material. Okay, let's say like you cut so that they're like interlocking, okay, like Lincoln logs. Okay, so what you've done is you have actually made something that's greater than the sum of its parts, because you didn't add any new material to it. You just arranged it in a certain way. And now, now you don't just have a pile of wood, you have a table. And it's the same wood. Wood has the same properties, but it is being constrained by its new arrangement. And that constraining is what allows it to be something, to embody tableness. Okay. Form and material are interdependent, not only in definition, but also in fact. Though distinct as ideas and separable in speech, they are, especially in living things, grown together in the enmattered form or the informed matter that is the given thing. The dog and its flesh, the oak and its roots, no less than the desk and its wood, are as inseparable and related and mutually interdependent as the concave and the convex, right? So if you have something that's concave, so concave is inside and then convex is here. So you can't separate the convex from the concave. Okay, they exist simultaneously. So too, I would not advise trying to separate the dog from its flesh. Okay, that can get very messy very quickly, and soon you will not have a living dog but a dead dog. Okay, its dogness is embodied in that the form is embodied in that matter. Okay, and this is just to go through what a lot of the book is about. He talks about, like, what are you doing when you eat something, right? When you take an apple and you eat it, that same material that used to be in the form of the apple is being broken down, and then the material, becomes human material. The protein becomes muscles. It's metabolized, it changes into energy, and then becomes fat, and so like he's trying to in that book explain what exactly is happening when you eat something. Okay, fine, but we're not going to get into that. So then he says, the relativity and interdependence of material and form persist also at multiple levels of organization. The oak, okay, so in other words, it's hierarchical. The oak wood that is material for the table itself is a special form, say, of xylem and phloem, which are in turn special formations of cells, which are special formations of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, and so on. So in other words, that the table is a form relative to the wood, okay? But that piece of wood is form relative to the xylem and phloem, whatever that means. And the xylem and phloem are form in relation to the cells, and a cell is form in relation to the carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and so on. At the lowest level, some least or ultimate material would be reached, if any such there be, that could not be analyzed further into its form and material, and whose parts, if it had parts, would be homogeneous with the whole. Such an ultimate material would be more than material relative to some other form. It would be matter. So theoretically, at the bottom of everything, the smallest stuff that everything is made out of is pure matter without form. Okay, but we don't really know what that is. Okay, last paragraph. And this is where he really defines form. Okay, but you need the other ones to get to this. If material is material relative to a form, then what is a form? Form is often connected with shape and figure, but when we think of form with regard to living beings, we mean more than shape or figure, and more than an aggregate of corporeal parts. A pile of rocks has shape but not form. It is a heap, not a whole. Okay, now here's the definition. This is my favorite definition of form. Form is what makes a being a unity and a whole in the world and through time. Form is that order or ordering that makes a one of the many components, giving it an integrity the components by themselves do not have. Okay, I'm going to read that again, just so we can appreciate it. Form is what makes a being a unity and a whole in the world and through time. Form is that order or ordering that makes a one of the many components, giving it an integrity the components by themselves do not have. It is, I confess, extremely difficult to say just what this unifier is, if it is a distinct what. It cannot be the outside surface or skin, although the boundary defines the limits of the organism against everything that it is not. It does not define what it is. So you take a dog, right? So the skin of the dog defines the limit of the dog, so against everything that it is not. But you wouldn't say that the skin of the dog defines what the dog is. The dog is more than just skin, okay? It's just like the outer limits of the dog. It says, the boundary is not the cause of unity, but rather one of its manifestations, right? A dog is not just a bag of dog organs and dog bones contained in dog skin, right? But it is the boundary of the dog organism. We begin to suspect that form is not primarily something visible or tangible. In short, that there is, in this sense, some immaterial thing that unites and informs the absolutely corporealized organism, but what it is, we cannot define. Yet we may continue to discern its meaning and its work. Okay, that is the end of Leon Cass. Okay, any questions now. Yeah, Ayala.
Okay, specifically on the highlighted definition, the
Yeah.
first sentence, when it says in the world and through time,
Yeah.
what specifically does that mean, like through time?
Good question. I assume what he means is that if you take a snapshot of let's say like a triangle, okay, you could like abstract its form from it, okay, but the things in the world are not just like symbols. Like you have a form that here's the example, right? So someone said is Theseus's ship. Have you heard of that? Right. So that's if you have a ship and you replace one board with another one, and you place another board with another one, and then say eventually you replace all the same boards, is it the same ship or not? Right. So the answer is yes. Okay. And same thing with your body. And I don't really know the biology of this. So if I'm wrong about this, then just take some other like part of your body that your cells, many of your cells are replaced, right? Like they die and then they're replaced or whatever, So, but you're the same person. So form is that thing that persists throughout time, even as the matter is like lost and changes. Okay. I think it's always emphasizing throughout time.
Okay, so then would two dogs, let's say, we would call them having the same form or different ones?
So it depends on what level you're talking about, because there's the form of dog and then there's the form of Fido, okay, right, the particular dog, so like same thing with like these two dogs partake of the form of dog, but then those two dogs and that cat, or I should say that cat that I saw dashing across the screen, partake of the form of animal, and then all the animals and then the plants have the form of organism. So like there are higher levels of form that they partake of, but there is form that's particular to one individual. And I'll give you another weird example. Identical twins, arguably when they're born, I don't know if this is even true, same form but different material. Okay. I guess it depends on what you say the physical form is, of a baby. I don't know. Humans are very difficult to think about. Okay, I'm trying to avoid this here. Okay, now there is one more Rambam that I want you to be aware of. The Rambam in the Morning Book in 168, which I tried to contemplate doing, and it's just okay. It's just like that's where he really goes into depth trying to explain how you get ideas from things. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna rely. Look, the Rambam says in our Mishnah and Avos that he gave us, he's relying on the understanding of someone who already has studied this, and he's just giving you like some notes. Okay, so we're going to try to understand it based on what we know. Okay, so now I think we're in a position to understand the first half of this. The Daas that we arrive at and learn is the apprehension of the concepts we apprehend. And he gives two examples: whether by abstracting the form and cognizing it, or whether by apprehending the forms that are separate in their existence without us making them Daas, but they in and of themselves are Daas. Okay, now the first category there, I think is easier to get. Okay, that's just the normal process of knowing things that we're familiar with. And let's use the building example again, okay, because I think it's the easiest to work with. So you've got the building and you're an architecture student. So the building is material that has that's organized in a certain design, a certain form. Okay, you go and you study the building, and what happens is, sorry, let me go back even further. Okay, before that building is even made, the architect has the form of the building in his or her mind. Okay, then the architect transforms matter into that building. I mean, obviously he hires a contractor to do it. That's the efficient cost. Okay, but and all the builders, but he builds the building. So now the form that was only in his mind is now in the building also. And then you, the architecture student, come and you study the building and you abstract that form into your own mind. Okay, so now the form exists in three places: in the originator's mind, in the building, and in your mind. Okay. Another example to use that I find very useful is imagine a lump of clay, so matter, okay, and a signet ring, right, like a stamp, okay, stencil, whatever you want to use. Okay, I like signet rings. Okay, so the signet ring is the form, and when you stamp it, the impression of that form gets impressed on the matter. Okay. And what you could do is, if you never saw the signet ring, you could look at the stamp, the impression that it made, and you could abstract what that form looks like. Okay. So all things in the world are like matter that have been stamped with certain forms. And when you're trying to learn about them, you're abstracting that form from that matter. Okay. And we call we call the form in the building a form, but we call the form in your mind a concept. Okay, and the Hebrew word he uses is a muskal. Okay, so you're extracting the form, and when it's in your mind, it is a muskal. It's a concept. Okay, yeah, Vanessa.
I think where I'm getting lost is, I think I get the Aristotle stuff perfectly. I think I get form and matter. What I'm getting lost is what exactly translates into dot and what translates into.
Okay, so right now he's saying that Daas is the concepts. Okay, so when you abstract the form and it's in your mind, that form in your mind is called Daas.
Okay.
Okay. That we're gonna go with that for now. Okay. We might have to update it as we go. Okay. So I think we understand this part right now. Okay. But then he says, whether by abstracting the form and cognizing it, or whether by apprehending the forms that are separate in their existence without us making them Daas, but they in and of themselves are Daas. Okay, now so there he's referring to the angels, right? Because the angels are the Rishonic term from Aristotle about angels is seichel nifrad, which is a separate intelligence, or seichel nivdal, a separate intelligence. So that's what he's referring to. That was what he said in the Mishnah Torah when he says they're a form without any material at all. They're the angels because they're not physical bodies, but forms that are distinct from one another. So what do you think he means when he says, by apprehending the forms that are separate in their existence without us making them Daas, but they in themselves are Daas? Like, how is that different from studying a building? Oops, sorry. Like, I get the concept of studying a building and getting the concept in my mind, but this is a little bit more difficult. Yeah, Lauren?
Is it because maybe like they're not physical at all, so that it's hard, like you kind of have to just think of it in your mind alone and don't have like any physical thing to see or visualize?
Right. I think that's what he means. Okay, so when you have the building, you can extract the form from it, and it's in your mind, but then you still see it in the building. Okay, but gravity, you don't see the laws of nature. Okay, you see the effects of the laws of nature, and you can like have mathematical representations of the laws of nature, and you can even like make diagrams like symbolically represented, but you don't actually like you can't look at gravity, right? It's just your mind is like beholding it, but it doesn't actually like become a you can't have the blueprint, so to speak, of it in your mind in the same way that you can with a building. Okay, so that's what I think when he says that you are apprehending these forms, but you're not making them Daas. They're not actually stamping your mind in the same way that a cognized physical thing does. That's all I'm getting. Yeah, let's go with Lauren first. I just want to
maybe it's a question. Does gravity have a form? Like, or these non-physical things, they have a form but no?
What I would say is gravity. I think the way the Rambam saying it is not gravity has a form. Gravity is a form.
It is a form. Okay.
Yeah, it is a form. Yeah, and I think the difference between blueprints and gravity, or sorry, between the design of a building and gravity, is like gravity itself acts on things. Okay, but all the other forms in the like the design, certainly in man-made objects, the design of a building doesn't act on its own. It doesn't, it has to be implemented. Yeah, okay, maybe that's getting too abstract stuff. But yeah, that's all I'll say about that for now.
But it doesn't have matter. It's just a form.
It's just a form. Yeah, it doesn't have matter. Form. Yeah. Yeah, Vanessa?
What does it mean to make something Daas?
Yeah, so my understanding of what he means by that is, since he said that Daas is the apprehension of the concepts we apprehend, so I think making something Daas means that you abstract the thing and then now it's in your mind. Now it is Daas. But with gravity, the way I'm like seeing it is like you're beholding the effects of gravity, but you never have like gravity is never Oh, here's the way to say it. Okay. When the architect builds the building, he has the design in his mind. The full design is in his mind. Okay. Then he builds it, and now the full design is organizing that matter. And then when you study it, the full design is in your mind. Okay. So it is a concept. Gravity, though, is something that you're beholding the effects of, but you don't get the law of nature itself. The force of gravity is not in your mind. Okay. You have like a representation of it in your mind, but gravity itself exists in the world outside. It's not purely a mental construct. I don't know if that helps or hurts.
It's not that it helps or hurts. I think they kind of feel like the same thing, the gravity in the building.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but it also still feels like the same thing. I feel like there's
okay, yeah, and I definitely see why, because the way that we relate to it is we still can, you can talk about the idea, the idea of gravity the same way you could talk about the idea of a building, but the difference is that, see, maybe now the Van Gogh is going to be an easier example, right? Van Gogh has the image of Starry Night in his mind, okay? And so do you, because you've seen it. You've seen pictures of it, right? Okay, it is totally in your mind, okay? You can learn about gravity, okay, all you want, but the entity, not the entity, the thing we call gravity, the really existing thing called gravity is not in your mind. You can talk about its properties and stuff, but it itself is not in your mind. Starry Night could be entirely in Van Gogh's mind. It's like you're taking the stencil and you're just stamping the material of his mind, you know?
I feel like the only difference there is that like gravity is invisible, which I don't think that that's
yeah. No, but that is a big part of it though, is that you can't see it.
You can't see it, but I can drop it and I can somewhat feel it. I don't know. I'm like not trying to be an art. I'm just
yeah. Okay.
And also,
yeah. I
all
think
of this is an exercise, and it's also separate from my question. I think.
Okay.
It's a different issue. I think.
Yeah.
What does it mean to make something dot? And the question is more. I'm used to talking about like having dot or like extruding it or like having knowledge, like understanding. What does it mean to make something knowledge? Like let's use the English. I think it sounds more awkward in English. Like what does it mean to
what does he
make
say in
that
Hebrew?
knowledge?
I know he didn't write Hebrew. But should nasimim anachnu das, that we place it, we make it das. Okay, that's how I translate it that way. Yeah. To make it das means that you acquire the concept, and now the concept is in your mind. Like you before you study the building, you don't have the concept of that design. Then you study it, and now you've made that building or that design into knowledge because you now know it.
How's it different from seichel?
So it's interesting.
I see. That's what you did is cognizing, right?
Right. Yeah. So
what's the difference? That's what's my confusing me.
So I think the way he's using it, I don't even know.
Okay. And I know this is impossible. I'm not
no. I mean, this is I don't know. I don't know. I'll tell you what I was going to say. I was going to say that cognizing it is the activity, and das is the result of that activity. But the reason why I'm hesitant to say that is because I think that's what he's going to say that Binah is.
That's why I was asking all that, because the thing that confused me, I got confused way before you said you think we'd get confused.
Yeah.
I got confused. I was like, oh, okay, this is talking about Binah. And then he said dot, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, okay. So that's why the most confusing part is this apprehension is what we call das and Binah, and it is the das. That's the part where like the mind goes unhinged. Okay. I have no idea what he means by that even to this day. Okay. But we're gonna step over it like it's some sort of like bonfire. Okay. Let me just highlight it here. Okay. And try not to get singed. Okay. And then we're going to go into his explanation of, unless anyone thinks that they know what he means. And this apprehension is what we call Binah, and it is the das. And I feel like there's a significance when he says the das, but I don't know what that means. The difficult part also in Hebrew, by the way, is that das means knowledge, but it also means mind. Okay. Like over here, when he says uvadas gamkin naskil, and with das we also cognize. So that sounds like he means by das he means mind. Okay, let's read on it and see if we can get this next part. And with das we also cognize, and it becomes possible for us to apprehend what we apprehend. it is as if, now here's where he explains the Mishnah, it is as if the Tana is saying, if we do not apprehend a concept, we have no Daas. And if we have no Daas, we will not apprehend a concept, because with Daas, we will apprehend it. So I'm going to suggest that we forget about gravity and angels for a second and just think about the building example and see if we can plug that in. If we do not apprehend a concept, we have no Daas. And if we have no Daas, we will not apprehend a concept, because with Daas, we apprehend it. See if we can figure out what that means. And at this point, by the way, I'm going to give you a tip. Okay, this is going to sound weird. Don't stick too closely with the Rambam's words. Okay, in other words, if you feel like based on the discussion up until now, you have an intuition about like what the relationship is between Daas and this thing that we're calling Binah, whatever that is, then go ahead and like express that and develop it, because it might be what the Rambam is saying. Yeah, Ayala?
I haven't fully like seen this through to the text yet.
Yeah.
But is he saying that Daas is like, would it make sense to say that there's like some other like term that we like haven't discussed yet in English, which is like the form in our head? And it's not making the form. It's not like an action.
Right.
It is like form.
Yeah.
But he's differentiating between the concept and in our head.
Okay, right. So I do think that is what he means by muskal, by the the concepts that we apprehend, and I think he is calling that das. So so if you are going to say that, are you reading this as something different? I know you said it's not quite in the text yet. I just want to understand what you're saying.
Are you able to scroll down for a minute to the...
Like, I don't know what's making you say that it's something we haven't talked about yet, because what you just said sounds like the way I'm understanding this first line.
So I was like, the green is what I was like thinking that from, is that like this apprehension, meaning the act of, like, I don't know what the act is, but some act of getting the Daas.
Okay, right.
Is Binah, but you're saying that's muskal? No.
So the apprehension is the hasaga. that's another word, right? Yeah. So I'm in my lingo here, I'm translating muskal as concept and like naskil as to cognize, or you know what, maybe I'll change it to conceptualize. So it's the same shoresh. I think he says that somewhere else. No, I think that's it then. Okay, yeah. And then hasaga is to apprehend or to grasp. Lahasiga is to grasp or to apprehend. Yeah. So he definitely is talking about something else here, right? That the getting of it. There's like the it, and then there's the getting of it.
So is there like some other thing which is like there is some type of form which only exists in the minds of people which grasp it, and therefore without Binah, without someone grasping it, it will never exist?
Okay, when you said that, then a little light went off in my head. So that sounds like it could be on a good track, and that also is edging closer to the statement of, if we don't apprehend the concept, we have no Daas, and if we don't have Daas, we will not apprehend no concept. Okay, yeah. Continue to think about that. I'm going to get Vanessa's idea or question first. Yeah.
This is a complete tangent, but this is like the only way my brain is allowing me to understand that last quote.
Yeah.
My ex is an entomologist. He like knows all types of bugs in and out.
Yeah.
Before I met him, if I saw a certain bug with yellow and black stripes, I would think it was a bee no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't know what I wouldn't know. Now that I've dated him and I've like studied a million flies with him, I know that there are certain things called, like, they're not called bee flies, they're called hover flies, but they're like, they look like bees.
Yeah.
And it's not even that like each one has its own like looking at them before, I wouldn't have known that I didn't know that those were a different thing than bees. I might have just been like, they're a weird bee.
Right.
I think like if you don't understand the concept, if you don't understand the concept of like these bee-looking flies, then you don't have the knowledge of them no matter what. And if you don't have that knowledge, you're not going to understand that you don't understand. Like you're just going to like live your life thinking those are bees. Once you know, then it's like, oh, okay, then I can understand. And then when you get to his level, you can be like, okay, I know what each one of these like.
I think you're onto something. Okay, so I think this is. I was going to actually use a similar example with blueprints, or sorry, with buildings, because it's similar than bees, but it works out. Is that like I've been using up until now the example of the architecture student who knows what building designs are, and therefore when he sees a building, a material building, he can see the form in that building. Okay, but to people who don't know, architecture, they can't get the form out of the building because they don't have that preconceived concept. So there is like this circular relationship that the more, or let's use something that many of us are familiar with, of like a mishle, an idea in mishle, or a svara in halacha. Okay, so like when you first start off learning mishle or gemara, and you've never seen mishle ideas or never seen svaras, you just can't get it on your own. Like you just can't abstract it because you don't know what you're looking for even. Okay, but then the more experience you have with the process of extracting, the more experience you have with fully formed ideas, mishle ideas or halacha svaras, then the better you're going to be at extracting them from new cases and new psukim. Okay, and the more you practice that, then the more concepts you're going to get, the more mishle ideas you're going to get. Okay, now we got a stew going, I think. Okay, right. So in other words, all right, I gotta forget which one's which. Im ein Binah, ein Daas. Oh, you know what I saw? Hold on. Something just lit up. Okay, so someone mentioned that there's another version of this mishnah that reverses them and that works out better according to the Rambam. I'm going to explain it that way. If there's no Daas, then there's no Binah. So if you don't have concepts, okay, so if you don't know building designs, if you don't know mishle ideas, if you don't know about these bee-like fly thingies that Vanessa's talking about, if you don't know halacha svaras, you're not going to be able to engage in Binah, which is the process of extracting the ideas from the new things. Okay, you just won't be able to do that. Okay, so you need Daas in order to get that. Okay, but the cool thing is the more Daas you have, then the more you're going to be able to engage in Binah and get more Daas. Okay, so in other words, if there's no Binah, you're not going to get more Daas. Okay, so each one feeds into the other one. Now I know that we're kind of sidestepping the question of how do you get any Daas in the first place, and I think the Meiri is going to address that, but I'm not convinced that the Rambam is even touching that question. Yeah, Lauren.
Can you clarify then in this idea, like what Daas is? Is it the process of understanding the form or like conceptualizing the
okay, so
form?
Here I'm going to write out my understanding here. I don't know if you can hear me. My Zoom just
we hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Well, what happened? Okay, so something weird happened on my computer. It changed windows. I can never. This is my second desktop. Oh, there we go. I never know how to access it. Okay, and now we're back. Okay, by the way, that beautiful painting was painted by our very own Mati, which he gave me, which is hanging on my wall there. But anyway, okay, so okay, so let me write out my understanding, Lauren, and then tell me if this is going to help you. Okay, so hold on a second here. Summary of Rambam. Okay, so okay, Daas equals the concepts, i.e. the abstracted forms. The forms, and I'm going to ignore angels for now. Okay, the forms we abstract from matter and have in our minds. Okay, Binah Binah equals, hold on, can't switch to, hard time switching from the Hebrew to the English. Okay, there we go. Binah equals the process or activity of abstraction, of abstracting those forms. Okay. Then we have im ein daas ein binah means if you don't have concepts in a given area, you will not be able to abstract those forms from what you observe. Okay, and then im ein binah ein daas means if you don't engage in the process of abstracting forms, then you won't have any new forms, which in turn would help your binah. Okay, so I think, and I'll put this in parentheses just to make it complete here. So im ein daas ein binah, if you don't have concepts in any given area, you will not be able to abstract those forms from what you observe, and you will be lacking yeah, I'm not gonna touch that. Okay, that's my current understanding. Okay, Lauren, did that answer your question, or did I not answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I guess
Okay,
I'm just
good.
trying to think about like now I'm just like thinking about the next thing, like how Das is higher than Binah, but I think
Yeah.
that how you typed it out makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so I'm not convinced that. Okay, let me back on this. Das, I think, is higher than Binah because Das is what you're trying to get, through your Binah. So it's higher in the sense that the end is higher than the means. Okay. But I do think though that there are other Rishonim who view Chachma, Binah, Das as different classes of knowledge, and that doesn't seem to be the way the Rambam is using it. Yeah, Ayala?
So in Das, in Binah, you don't have concepts in a given area. Would you are you saying concepts synonymously with forms here, or is that different?
So I'm going to just give examples, right? So like building designs, mishle ideas, halachic svaras, species, or like species classifications. Okay, so yeah, so if you, I think mishle, I'm going to just use the example of mishle here. So if you've never learned mishle ideas, you will be very bad at getting those ideas from psukim, at engaging in Binah, of getting those from the psukim. So you need to acquire Das. You need to acquire lots of mishle ideas. Now, I think the way you get it, really, for starters, is through chachma, is through being taught it. Okay, but then once you have that, so then once you have Das, you'll become more proficient. But if you, without engaging in that, in practicing and honing and sharpening that activity of deriving mishle ideas on your own, you're not going to get more Das, more concepts, more mishle ideas. It's going to be limited. I actually want to segue from here. I think this will actually help us. If we segue from here into what is the practical application of this lesson? Okay, because this seems to be about epistemology, about like how the mind knows things, So what would be the practical application here? And if we can answer, these last three questions, really, who's the intended audience, and what's the havamina? Like, why would you think, especially if you really understand what the Rambam is saying, like, what would the havamina be? You don't have to answer all the questions, but yeah, Lauren.
Sounds like it's teaching you how to learn, like how maybe like you can't just rely on being taught things.
Okay,
but
good.
If you really want to acquire real like concepts of Torah, you have to really do, let's say, the work of Binah, and then it's kind of like a wheel, like you have to do both, a cycle.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay, so I usually, I'm going to just give credit, say this b'shem Omro. So usually my chavrusa on Shabbos is Isaiah, but he was away last Shabbos, and my backup chavrusa is Isaac, and he was also away. So I learned with Sean, and Sean and I worked on this for like an hour and a half. We didn't come up with answers, and then on the walk to lunch, then he came up with this idea, and then like I solidified it. So his idea was, like you're saying, is that it's directed at what you put your energy into working on. Okay. And the way he said it is, he says, there are people who really only want to focus on Daas. Okay. And that might be for different reasons. It might be because, I'll give you several examples, when I was in Rav Pesach's Gemara shiur, then I was very insecure about my own thinking. And I didn't want to, the style of Rav Pesach's Gemara shiur is, everyone works on the Gemaras and then prepares it. And then you try to come up with a svara, with a halachic theory, and then you pitch it in shiur, and then he critiques it. And then like after everyone pitches all the stuff, then he gives his svara, and like you see how much like you're, that you don't know how to learn, So when I was in shiur, in his shiur, I only would give my own svaras if I felt like they were perfect. I did not want to put myself out there and be like critiqued or criticized. So I would only say something if I thought it was right and clear. And as a consequence, I missed out on a lot of learning because I was not developing my Binah in a good way. Okay, another example, and I don't know if this is true anymore because Rav Pesach's shiur has changed and Rabbi Feder's shiur has changed. But back in my day, when people had the option of an afternoon seder, should they go to Rabbi Feder's afternoon shiur, or should they review Rav Pesach's shiur? Okay, that was the big question in my day. Okay, and I said it really depends on what your priorities are, and a lot of that depends on how much time you have left. Okay, the advantage of going to Rabbi Feder's shiur is you're going to see a lot of svaras. Okay, you're going to get a lot of Daas. Okay, because Rabbi Feder, the nature of what he takes up and the nature of how he gives shiur and the style of his thinking is he gives many svaras over the course of like a week, But the way that Rav Pesach does it is, Rav Pesach is, if you're in Rav Pesach's shiur, you're going to really be working on the art of Binah, and review is a big part of that. So you might work a whole week just to get one idea clear, but you're going to be going through that whole like in-depth working on Binah and training yourself in that. And you do need both. Like you definitely need exposure to lots of ideas, and you also need to put in all the work on the Binah thing. Okay, so I think the Havamina here is like Lauren was saying, is like some people just want to learn from other people. Like they want to be dependent learners, either because they don't trust themselves or they want to learn more or whatever, or they're insecure. And it does take a certain amount of insecurity. When you're doing Binah, you could be wrong. That's the thing, is that you can take a lot of missteps. Okay, God knows that's happening this year. Okay, and like you're gonna go down false roads or whatever. You're not gonna get the ideas. Okay, but if you don't engage in Binah, then you're not going to be able to produce good Daas. You're not going to be able to find good Daas, and you'll be dependent on other people for that. So you need to work in the Binah in order to get that Daas. But don't think there's another mistake you can make, and I've seen people make this mistake also, that they think they can just engage in Binah and get good results on their own without subordinating themselves to the master and getting lots of ideas. They think that they could just like go into an area and just like think about it and just get the ideas, and you can't do that either. You need to work on acquiring Daas in order to be able to become proficient at Binah. So it is a symbiotic process, and you need to put in work on both of them. And I think that's why this is relevant to the Chassid in training, that, there are certain, there is, this is relevant in different ways at every level of your learning. But look, there are, I'm not saying this to, I don't even have anyone specific in mind, but like Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav, was a great thinker. And there are people whose whole lives of Torah are just, all they do is they spend time learning the Rav's svaras, the Rav's ideas. they don't train themselves in the Binah to be able to come up with those ideas. And I'm using this example because that was why our yeshiva was founded, is to teach people the derech halimud of the Rav, of how does the Rav arrive at this das, and training people in that methodology in the Binah so that they can do it on their own, so those are the people, those are the people I'm describing who only do the das and they don't focus on the Binah. But then there are people who think that they could just open up a Gemara and just like come up with ideas without having the exposure to a lot of quality das from greater chachamim. And that's also a mistake, because then your Binah is going to misfire and you're going to go into a bunch of wrong conclusions. So I think that's it. Okay. Any questions here?
That was very good. Yeah, I really like
good.
this idea. Thank you.
Okay, good. I like it as well. And look, I still acknowledge that there are parts in the Rambam I don't understand. Like, where's that line again? Where's Mr. Greeny? V'zos ha'hasaga hi asher tikare bina. Okay, now that part I got. V'hi hadas. Slap. Like what's the? It is the das. I just don't get that. But honestly, I think this was a good enough workout for tonight. The Meiri has an idea that is relevant for understanding the bracha of atah chonin ladam das. I'll just tell you really quickly what it is. He holds that Daas is the innate capacity to learn things, and Binah is the acquired knowledge. And he says that's why in the tefillah you say Atah chonin la'adam Daas, you graciously grant man Daas, which means that you give it to him without any work. God just creates us in a way where like we are able to like see ideas. Okay, we have the capacity to. But then Binah, melamed la'enosh Binah, that you teach man Binah, which means that Binah is referring to the work that you do to get the ideas. Okay, and he says that that actually I don't even want to go into that because I don't want to. Let's leave it at that for tonight. And then Rabbeinu Yonah is also potentially good to understand, but I think we did enough of a workout for tonight, and I'm happy with our understanding here. And the takeaway here also, I think this has a real practical takeaway in terms of what you spend your time learning. Like there are lots of shiurim that okay, like look, I mean, someone I've had this criticism a lot before, which is people have told me, can't you give more shiurim where you're just like just teaching, like not the discussion, and not like the group effort. Like someone said, like all your learning is like group learning, all your shiurim, yeah, that's my style, because I get the most out of it there. But I do think like one of the roles that I play is that I think there's a lot of great Torah out there that if you want to lecture, you could just listen to the lecture, but like, and that should be done. Like you should set aside time to like read books and listen to the lecture style shiurim. But like there is what we're doing in almost all of our shiurim is we're doing Binah. We're working on our Binah, and we're going to get less das, because we're spending more time on the Binah, but it's going to lead in Binah in das. If you don't have this Binah, you're going to be able to acquire less das. Your das is going to be a lesser quality, the das that you produce. So devoting the time to the Binah here is training you to be able to become more proficient in getting das on your own. So I think it's time well spent. And I think that in the teachers that we all learn from, I think there's a good balance. It's like, you need both. Like that's what our morning shiurim are for in yeshiva. That's what like the shiurim I try to give are, is like working on the Binah. But thank God there's a lot of das out there also. Yeah. Okay. That went better than I thought.
just to say to that last point, I just want to let you know that I'm never bored in your shiur. Like I don't have the desire to look at my phone when you're giving shiur. So I like it a lot.
That is good. Yeah, Binah's exciting territory. Yeah. Okay. So Bli Neder next week. I guess now that we've done the first 3 clauses, I guess we got to do the 4th clause. And then maybe I'll see after that if we're too tired to do this, too tired of this mishnah to do the sforno, then the sforno will stay aside. And we'll move on. We'll see what happens. Okay. In Kemach in Torah, and I think because of the question that was asked about the 1st and the 4th clause, we might have to go back to the 1st clause. Okay. Have a good night. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. And talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.